Welcome back. Today we're going to see all of our work with conversions and all of our work of ordering and comparing numbers on a number line pay off as we go ahead and order different types of numbers, least to greatest and greatest to least. You're going to need your calculator for this, so if you don't have it, go ahead and grab one, and let's get started right now. Today we're going to be talking about ordering real numbers. So we're going to be taking a look at our fractions, our decimals, our percents, our square roots, our scientific notation, and we're going to be putting them in order from least to greatest and greatest to least. So let's go ahead and get started right now. So first we're going to start with some key ideas. So first we're going to be talking about what does least to greatest mean. So if we're going from least to greatest, that means we're going to be going from smallest to biggest. And on the number line, that means we're going to be going from left to right. The other thing that we need to talk about is going from greatest to least. So if greatest to least means we're going to be going from the biggest number to the smallest number, or on our number line, we're going to be going from our right to our left. Go ahead and make sure you've gotten this written all down, and then let's take a look at example A. So here we are at example A, and it tells us to place the following numbers in order from least to greatest. However, we've got a little bit of a problem. We've got a number that's in scientific notation, a number that's a percent, a decimal, and a fraction. So none of these numbers are alike, so I can't easily compare them. So I'm going to have to turn them all into one type of number in order to compare them easily. So the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert each number to a decimal. If you remember from our earlier notes with our flow chart with our arrows, everything led back to decimals. So that's what we're going to use to convert all of these things into. Can you convert everything into a percent? Sure. Can you convert everything into a fraction? Yes, but that's not going to be the easiest thing to do. So the easiest thing to do is going to be convert into a decimal. Doesn't mean it's the only thing we can do. However, it is going to be the easiest thing for us to do. So we're going to start by turning all of our things into decimals. So I've got 4.8 times 10 to the negative first. So I'm going to move my decimal one place to the left. And I've got 0.48. I've got 175%, so I can either divide that by 100 or move my decimal trick, and I've got 1.75. Negative 0.9 is already a decimal, so I don't need to do anything with that. If you want to write down negative 0.9 underneath it because you like the way that it looks, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we're going to just know that it is a decimal. Negative 5 over 3, we're going to divide that in our calculator, top divided by the bottom, and we end up with negative 1.66. Repeating. So now I've got everything in decimals, and I notice that it wants me to put them in order from least to greatest. So a trick that I'm going to do to start is I'm going to isolate the negatives from the positives, because I know that all the negatives are going to be on the least and all the positives are going to be on the greatest, because no positive number is ever going to be smaller than a negative. So I've got two negative numbers here, and I've got two positive numbers here. So I know that the two numbers on the left are going to be bigger than the two numbers on the right no matter what. So I don't even have to worry about, hey, trying to compare all four of the numbers. I just have to compare two at a time. This helps me by breaking this problem into a couple smaller pieces than trying to compare all four numbers at once. So let's start with the least. So I've got negative 0.9 and negative 1.66. So if I'm trying to figure out which one is the least or which one is the furthest away from zero, it's going to be that negative 1.66, because the negative 1 is going to be a larger negative than the 0 that's right here. So those are going to make sure that the negative 1.66 is the smaller number. Now, when I write it, I'm going to write it in the original form. So I'm going to write negative 5/3, because it's not asking me to put negative 1.6 repeating in order. It's asking me to put negative 5/3 in order. So negative 5/3 is the smallest. Then I know negative 0.9 is going to be the next smallest because it's a negative. So it's automatically going to be smaller than the two positive numbers. Then I'm going to take a look at my two positive numbers. I got 4.48 and 1.75. And again, I can see that this 1 is going to be larger than this 0. So since the 1 is larger than the 0, I know that one is the greatest, so 175%. And then that 0.4 times 10.8 times 10 to the negative first slots in between. And there, I've ordered them from least to greatest. Let's go ahead and take a look at example B. Here we are at example B, and it says place the following numbers in order from greatest to least, and I've got 5 numbers this time, so that's a little bit of a change, and it wants me to go from greatest to least, so that's a little bit of a change. However, we're still going to follow the same method for figuring out which ones are larger and smaller. Because again, we've got a fraction, we've got a number in scientific notation, another fraction, a percent, and a decimal. So I'm going to have to convert all of these first before I can do anything, and I'm going to turn them all into decimals. So I've got 8/5. I'm going to divide that top by bottom, and I end up with 1.6. 2.5 times 10 to the negative first, so I'm going to move my decimal one place to the left because that negative lets me know that I've got a really small number that I'm dealing with. Negative 3/2, divide the top by the bottom again, I end up with negative 1.5. 18.5%, although it has a decimal in it, it is still a percent, so it's a percent with a decimal, not a decimal. So I'm going to move my decimal two places to the left, and I end up with 0.185. And then negative 0.173 is already a decimal, so I don't have to do anything with that. Now I'm going to be putting them in order from greatest to least. So I want to make sure that I separate out my positives from my negatives again. So here I've got a positive, here I've got a positive, here I've got a negative, so I'm going to skip that. I've got a positive here, and then my two negatives are the negative 3/2 and negative 0.173. So I know that those negatives are going to be to the far right, and I can just worry about three numbers at one time and two numbers at another time. So that's going to shrink my problem down so that I only have to do a small amount of comparisons. So I'm going to start by taking a look at the larger number. So I'm going to look for the biggest number of the three that I've got here of the positives. I've got a 1 in the first value, I've got a 0 in the first value, and I've got a 0 in the first value, so the 1 is going to be the biggest. So I know 8/5 is going first. Then I'm down to 0.25 and 0.18, and I know 0.2 is bigger than 0.1, so that 2.5 times 10 to the negative first is next. So then I'm left with only one other positive number, and that positive number, no matter how small it is, will always be larger than the biggest negative, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in there at 18.5%. So now I'm down to just my two negatives, so I got to figure out which one is the furthest one away from 0. So I like to look at it like money. The negative 1.5 is like owing somebody $1.50, and the other one is like owing somebody 17 1/3 cents. I'd much rather owe somebody 17 cents than $1.50, so I know that one's going to be closer than 0. So my 0.173 negative is going to be next, and then negative 3/2 is going to finish it up. So I've ordered my numbers from greatest to least. Let's go ahead and take a look at practice number 1 now. Here we are at practice number 1. It says place the following numbers in order from greatest to least. So you've got 4 numbers to work with there. I want you to go ahead and pause the video, try this one on your own. Remember to convert them all into decimals, then press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Did you get them in order from greatest to least? Make sure that your paper looks like mine. Make sure that you've written them in original form, and let's move on to example C. So here we are at example C, and it looks a little bit different. Example C tells us to fill in the empty boxes so the numbers are in order from least to greatest. So we've got 2 numbers filled in, and we have to fill in the 3 numbers that are missing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert everything to decimals, just like I always do. So negative 2/3 divided top by bottom, negative 0.6 repeating, 2.5 times 10 to the positive third. So I'm going to make sure that I move my decimal 3 places to the right. So that gives me negative 2,500. Negative 0.92 is already a decimal. Don't need to do anything with that. The square root of 1 is 1. And negative 16.5%, again, it does have a decimal, and it is a percent. It is a percent with a decimal, not just a regular decimal. So I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the left, and I do that, I get negative 0.165. So I've got everything converted to decimals. However, that doesn't help me with the negative 7/8 and 8.5%. I have to also convert those to decimals in order to figure out which numbers fit in between. So negative 7 divided by 8, I get negative 0.875. 8.5%, I can either divide by 100 or move my decimal a couple times. I'm going to move my decimal, and I get 0.085. So now I've got everything converted to decimals, so now I can figure out which things go in between. So I'm going to start with the box to the right. I'm going to look for the ones that are the greatest, because that is going to be the easiest because it's only one box. So I just need to figure out which number is bigger than 0.085. So I know it has to be a positive number, so I can eliminate the negatives right away, and there are 4 negative numbers. So there's only one positive number left, and that's the square root of 1. And just by eliminating all of the negatives and knowing my number has to be positive, I know that my answer there has to be the square root of 1. So the square root of 1 is what's going to go in my first box. Now again, I could just drag this one up here, but again, I'm not trying to write them in the number that I converted them in. I'm trying to write them in original form. So now I have to figure out the two middle boxes. So I need to figure out something that's going to be negative and something that's going to be closer to the positive. And I've got four choices left because I've eliminated this positive one. So let's draw an X through that because that way we don't get confused. So let's take a look at negative 0.66. Does it fit between the negative 0.875 and the 0.85? Yes, it does. So it's one of my choices, but which one is it? I don't know. Let's go to the next one. So now I've got negative 2,500. Does negative 2,500 fit between negative 0.875 and positive 0.085? No, it doesn't. It's way too negative. It's going to be far down the side, so I know that one doesn't even fit, so I can eliminate it by drawing an X. Negative 0.92, does it fit between? Is negative 0.292 smaller or bigger than negative 0.875? It has less value than negative 0.875, so it does not fit between. So I'm going to draw an X there. So that one is not a correct answer either. So that leaves me with just two answers. So now I just have to figure out the order of those two answers, and that way I can figure out which one goes in the boxes first. So which one has less value, the negative 0.66 or the negative 0.1? The negative 0.66 is like owing somebody 66 cents. The negative 0.165 is like owing 16 cents. I'd rather owe the 16 cents. So I know my negative 2/3 is going to be the one that is the less value. So that's going to go right up next to the negative 7/8. And then negative 16.5% is going to be the other one in that box. So now I filled it in. It looks from least to greatest, and I've eliminated the ones that don't work. Let's go ahead and take a look at practice number 2. Here we are at practice number 2. It says place the following numbers in order from least to greatest. Be careful here. All the numbers have a lot of ones and zeros in them, so you have to be very careful when ordering them. I want you to go ahead and pause the video now. Try this one on your own. Press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Were you able to put all the numbers in order from least to greatest? Make sure that the negative was all the way to the left and all the positives were to the right. I hope that you've got all the answers that match mine. If they don't, go ahead and make sure that your paper looks like mine now. And let's go on to practice number 3. Here we are at practice number 3. It says place the following numbers in order from greatest to least. So again, I want you to try this on your own. These numbers look really big, so make sure you understand that all the numbers are going to be really big when you're all done. Go ahead and pause the video now, then press play again to see if you are right. How did you do? Were you able to get all of the correct answers? Make sure that your paper looks like mine if you didn't. This brings us to the end of this video, so if you like this video, go ahead and throw us a thumbs up. If you love this video, go ahead and throw us a sub, and we will see you in the next one.